Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and if there's one thing we could do with just a little bit more of in these tumultuous times of ours, I think it's a little bit of wholesomeness. I should know I've got a basket of wholesomeness right here. But if you happen to be basketly challenged, then not all is lost. There are plenty of delightful, wholesome video games out there on the Nintendo Switch, so we thought we'd throw some of them together that are really bloody good. In fact, we'd even go so far as to say that, in our opinion, they're the best. Now, I do think that some people have quite a specific definition of wholesome, so it may well be that some of these games don't fit completely into that category for you, but they kind of do for us, and hopefully we're going to justify how they fall into that category for us in the video. And to keep things sensible, we're going to randomize the list so that it is in no particular order, because realistically, when it comes to wholesomeness, it's just that it makes you feel good that's the important thing. So let's randomize it now and hope that it's not terrible. You know what? That's not bad. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Let's kick things off with Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. This is a delightful little romp where you play as the eponymous Captain Toad, or indeed Captain Toadette, in order to find some treasure. There's a clue in the name. Originally starting as a sort of a side game, or sort of side levels in Super Mario 3D World, this then blossomed into its own fully fledged game on Wii U, and as is the natural order of things, it was then ported to the Switch. The stakes are super low. It's just Captain Toad milling around trying to find some treasure to make himself nice and happy. I mean, I think maybe it's been suggested that there is some plot there and it's kind of like a build-up to Super Mario Odyssey, only originally it was kind of like a prequel to 3D World. They flip-flopped a lot, so I mean, it's Mario at the end of the day, so don't pay too much attention to the plot. Whichever way you slice it, it's a lovely, laid-back, chilled-out game where you can't jump, so you just have to use your old noggin to try and find your way through. There's no pressure, just go through it at your own pace and find some stuff. Lovely. Moving on to Haven Park, this is a game that, well, if you're looking at this and thinking, hey, that looks distinctly like a short hike, well, stop looking at the rest of my list. Yes, it absolutely shares some DNA with that game, but it is also its own beast in its own right. Rather than going around and flying and things like that, you are very much stuck to the ground, and you have to work your way around playing as your little character Flint, who's a little bird who goes pew every time you press A, and it's wonderful. You've got to go around finding campsites, building them up, and trying to find other campsites and building them up, drawing people in so you can chat to them. Maybe they'll give you a little side quest as well and let you know about something cool or interesting on the island. It's just a game about slow and gentle exploration, and it's not like a massively long game by any stretch. It's really quite bite-sized and a little bit slow and pedestrian, but that's exactly what it aims to be, and as a result, it's just super charming and super relaxing. We're only 2 games in, and I think I've said super about 15 times. Next up, we have Spiritfarer. Now, this is definitely one of the slightly more contentious games when it comes to being quote-unquote wholesome, but we think it definitely falls into that category. As you may have guessed from the title, this is a game where you're tasked with ferrying spirits to their final dignified resting place as they pass on into the next world. Dealing with death doesn't immediately scream wholesome, but bear with us. Whilst the game entirely and completely deals with the concept of death, and it doesn't shy away from it either, it deals with it in the most positive way possible, about learning, understanding, and ultimately embracing death as a natural part of life. And at the end of the day, we are all going to die. I mean, I like to deny it to myself sometimes, but at the end, I'm gonna die at some point. It's not going to be for 600 years, but it'll happen. And the idea of being a comfort to a wayward spirit who's maybe angry or frustrated and allowing them to finally come to terms with things, I don't think many people can argue that that's not wholesome. Come on. It's also chuffing enormous, like it's a big old game. So if you like to get your hours worth, then give this one a look in. Just be prepared for a few little weepies here and there. Next on the list, we have Animal Crossing New Horizons, which I'm sure I don't need to explain, but hell, I'm explaining all the other games, so I'm gonna do this one as well, damn it. This is like the holotype of a wholesome game. It's not necessarily the most wholesome game in the world, there are maybe better examples, but it's the one that everyone thinks of. You land on an island in this Animal Crossing, and you have to build it up, you have to scavenge for things, and when I say scavenge, I mean you don't really need to, you could just mill around for the the rest of your life. You don't have to eat, you don't have to sleep, really. You can just go about your life and do whatever you want. And everyone's lovely, which is something that some people have complained about, some of the villagers not really having, you know, a great deal of variety in their personalities. But at the end of the day, everyone's nice, everyone's polite, everyone's pleasant. It's pretty damn wholesome. There's no real ultimate goal. It's just a game designed to sink hours and hours and hours into doing whatever you like. And yeah, you can, you know, do some slightly nasty things like force villagers into pitfalls, but at the end of the day, it's small, sort of really quite sort of meaningless pranks, and you have to be the one to initiate that. The game never tells you, you're the one who's doing it, so maybe you're the unwholesome thing in this game. Either way, it's a lovely way to while away a few hours, maybe going around picking some fruit, or, you know, planning out your next big area of your island, or maybe just, you know, going to a smaller island or just hanging around with some villagers. You do what you like. It's your own little island paradise that you can shape as you see fit. Another classic example, Stardew Valley. Yes, some bad things can happen, I'm well aware. But realistically, it's completely outweighed by the fact that you got the little Junimos going around going, peep, peep, peep. I can't do a Junimo impression. You inherit a farm, you go there, it's, you know, completely destroyed, and it's up to you to try and rebuild it. And rebuild it you do, and do it however you see fit. Earn money by cultivating plants and selling them, or maybe you can brew some beer, or you can make some cakes, or make some bread, or any number of things. You just do whatever you want, and there's all these villagers that are, I would say, not entirely wholesome, definitely not in the Animal Crossing way, but the end result is, at the end of the day, they've all, except one, got a good heart. A few years ago, it was made even better with the inclusion of co-op, and really, that's the only way I really enjoy playing the game these days, and it's not, I think that's just a personal thing. I just like going around with someone else and communicating, and just, you know, building up the farm, doing this, doing that, making things as good as they can possibly be. You can just sit down, sink 6 hours into it, and come out of it feeling like, oh lordy, I've just had a lovely time in a fictional world. What a weird thing to say. Next up, we have Alba, a wildlife adventure. This is a game that maybe not many people, well, maybe, you know, there's quite a few people out there, I'm sure, who've probably never heard of it, but you know what? You're doing yourself a disservice. You control Alba, a young girl who's visiting her grandparents on a tiny little island where there's all sorts of wildlife, but, you know, things are a little bit in disrepair. You know, you've got to go around and you've got to, like, make things as good as they can possibly be, because there's this horrible, like, big bloomin' hotel that's being built, and it's gonna destroy the nature reserve, and that may sound like silly drama, but within the context of the game, it actually genuinely feels quite substantial. So you got to go around, you got to prove to the other islanders that it's worth keeping this nature reserve. And I bloody love nature reserves. I love nature, and most specifically, I love birds, and that's like 99% of the nature here. Well, more like 90. You go around fixing things, talking to the other islanders, documenting the nature there, and just generally, it's just a lovely time. And like, the real icing on the cake for me is Alba's occasionally random running cycle. It's just wonderful. Sometimes she'll do a little skip and stuff, and sometimes she'll just like flail her arms. There's clearly a huge amount of passion and joy gone into this game, and it just oozes it, and it oozes wholesomeness as well. It's just like a big warm hug on a admittedly already warm island, so maybe have a cool drink afterwards. Just about sliding into the list, we've got Good Job. Now, yeah, this is probably the most contentious one on this list, except for maybe the next one. This is a game where you have to complete certain tasks, and realistically, it doesn't matter how you do it. You've just got to get the job done. And if that means destroying entire departments, then so be it. It's definitely not like a dictionary definition of wholesome, but just the fact that you've got to go in and do these tasks, and everyone around you is just kind of like accepting of the fact that you're going to do it however you like. There's something sort of almost cathartically wholesome about it, you know, sort of like, gotta get the job done, okie dokie. It's the sort of the ignorance in the mind of your own character, just so completely oblivious to the idea that things need to be done in a certain way. It's just kind of like, hey, if I smash that wall through, this will be a lot easier. There's just something very endearing about it. And that catharticism is another delicious layer to this wholesome experience. Not only do you get the sort of the warm, glowy satisfaction of something like like Animal Crossing, but you also get the kind of destructive side of you that very nicely tickled. Maybe it's just me, but I've put it on this list and I don't care. Yeah, Untitled Goose Game. Is this actually wholesome? I'd say bloody absolutely. You play as a goose, a horrible goose, and you've got to go around ruining people's days. And it's... Again, it's very similar to Good Job in the sense that, yeah, you're absolutely doing things that are arguably not wholesome. But nothing that you do is truly actually, like, really that terrible. It's just kind of frustrating to everyone around you, and at the end of the day, you're just a goose. You're an idiot bird, or at least geese are semi-intelligent. Well, semi-intelligent. You're just doing what a goose does, and a goose does whatever a goose damn well pleases. You're not hurting anyone, you're not injuring anyone, you're not, you know, sort of even killing anyone as a goose. You're just going around making everyone's day just a little bit more, let's say, colourful. I've made it no secret that I absolutely adore this game. The setting in and of itself really does help to amplify the wholesomeness. It really does feel like a proper children's television program, typical UK village. Like, you know, it's the kind of Camberwick Green, or even like Hot Fuzz if you want to go to a different extreme. That kind of just this lovely local country village where everyone gets along and nobody has any problems with anyone. And it's just lovely, and you're there to kind of disrupt it, but only in a very wholesome way. Penultimately, we have a short hike, which is a game that is just flat out lovely. You arrive on an island, and your task is to get to the top of the peak that's there, which is pretty damn high. And first of all, it starts off with new things like climbing and things like that, but over time you get golden feathers that allow you to fly and indeed climb a lot further, which is basically the entire kind of like gameplay loop of it. You'll be exploring the island, completing tasks for people, all in order to get more and more gold feathers so that you can indeed reach the top. You'll be running, flying. Flying is one of the loveliest things about this game. It is so beautifully implemented. And when you do get to the top, it's not exactly game over. There's still a few little bits and bobs for you to do here and there. And every single time you get a gold feather, which is pretty much doing everything on the island, any sort of like set task in the game, or at least it leads to maybe getting gold so you can buy more gold feathers, every single time you do that, you are increasing your freedom. And there's just something so insanely addictive and so insanely wonderful and freeing about that. It's got a great message of determination, and it is an absolute pittance on the eShop. Like, I'm gonna look up how cheap it is. £6.29. It's nothing. It's throwaway money. If you buy one game from this list, I would really encourage it to be a short hike, because it's just an incredibly pure experience, an incredibly condensed and yet at the same time low stakes thing. Honestly, it is just pure wonderment from start to finish. And lastly on the list, we have Yoku's Island Express, which some people may not have heard of. Which, that's the problem with the Switch having so many bloody games. In this game, you play as Yoku, a tiny little insect, although I suppose he's not really that tiny given the context of everything else, who is a postman and is absolutely determined to get the post delivered. And that's just wholesome in and of itself. I feel like I don't need to say anything else. But the best thing about this game, it's a full-blown Metroidvania with pinball mechanics, and it's not even like some small little bits of pinball here and there. The entire like main parts of the game are pinball based. This is a game that you sort of look at it and you sort of think, how on earth's that going to work? And yet it works sublimely. And when playing, Yoku's getting thrown around and bashed about, and he doesn't care. He's just concerned about getting the post to where it needs to go. And he's just happy all the time. It's so lovely. You're only going to be doing lovely things. There's a pureness about Yoku that I love to death. And the fact that it's this big pinball-based Metroidvania, it's hard to top. Like, it is just, even if you ignore the wholesomeness, this is still a fantastic, fantastic game. So yeah, absolutely give this one a look in if you're looking at this and thinking, "Cool, blimey, that looks like a bit of a laugh." Incidentally, if you don't want to take my word for any of these games, then make sure you check out nintendolife.com. We'll have a link in the description and indeed a pinned comment, because we're nice like that, where the wonderful Kate Gray has given her own opinions on these games, so you can see that it's not just me that enjoys a good heaping spoonful of delicious wholesomeness. And there you have it, 10 wholesome games that are also absolutely splendiferous on the Nintendo Switch. Is there anything that you'd add to this list? Is there something on here that you would say, "Good heavens, that's not wholesome, that's terrifying," because of some deep dive theory that makes no sense? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you give that subscribe button a big old squeeze, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye bye. Punch key, cobweb. You get in the basket. You want to get in the basket? Good boy. Good boy. I should know, I've got a basket of wholesomeness right here. There's actually 2 cats in here. He's about to leave and she won't come up.